Great. Okay, so the next major personal finance topic that we're going to discuss is debt. There's a good chance that many of you have taken out student loans before. They could be from undergrad or a grad degree or both. They could be federal, they could be private, or both. And you probably also have a credit card. So all that is to say that you've probably borrowed money before or will borrow in the future. So now is a really great time to identify and to define your relationship with debt. So before we talk about actual debts that you may have taken on or will take on in the future, I want to just set the tone around debt. In general, debt is seen as a negative. But we like to take a more positive approach to it because often it can help you access opportunities you wouldn't be able to otherwise. And there's a lot of value in that. So it's a personal decision whether taking on a debt is right for you or not. For that reason, we're not going to assign a value to your debt choices. You decide what's a good debt choice and what's a bad choice. When making debt decisions, ask yourself if you are comfortable with taking on the debt, if you have a plan to pay it off, if you know how it's going to fit into your budget. If you can answer yes to those questions, you should feel empowered to take on the debt that you're considering, if that's what makes most sense for you right now. And then a good rule of thumb for deciding if something is good or bad for you is by assessing the value that it's going to add to your life. So generally speaking, good debt is anything that can improve your financial position or net worth, if that's what you want to call it. So typically things like buying a house or taking out student loans to get a degree are good examples of this. Buying a house adds literal valuable assets to your portfolio. Taking out student loans to get a degree, it can add to your resume and make you a more marketable candidate for positions that may be higher paying down the line. So those are seen as good debts that you can enter into. Bad debts are any that are detrimental to your financial position, and only you know what's detrimental to you. So again, I cannot tell you what a good and bad debt is. That's something that you get to decide. So aside from student loans, the primary way that you'll interact with debt in the near future, assuming you don't have a car or a house, is through credit. And you're probably familiar with this concept of credit, but I'm going to break it down for you briefly. So it's all about trust. Your credit is represented in two primary ways, through credit scores and credit reports. A credit score is a numerical representation of your credit worthiness, or generally how trustworthy you are when it comes to borrowing money. And it's based on your credit history. So what you've demonstrated with your debt habits in the past. And there are two scoring methods, though they're similar enough that we don't need to break down the differences for you today. What you should know is that both methods are scaled from 300 to 850. And generally anything above 700 is pretty good. You should also know that they both take the same factors into consideration, though they may weight them differently. So those factors are your payment history. Have you paid the amounts that you owe on time, every month, etc.? Your credit utilization. So this is a ratio of how much credit you're using out of all the credit that's available to you. Generally speaking, you want to keep your credit utilization below 30%. So you want to demonstrate that you're not relying on debt to survive. Length of credit history is also a factor. So the longer that you've interacted with credit, the easier it is to demonstrate your typical habits and prove your credit worthiness. And then hard credit inquiries are also a factor. So these are when you give permission to potential lenders or others. You give them the chance to take a peek at your credit report. So then, speaking of credit reports, a credit report is a detailed account of your credit history. This includes your payment history, your account statuses, personal information, etc. While your credit score gives you a quick assessment of your status with credit, it leaves a lot to the imagination. So, to stay aware of how others perceive your creditworthiness and general debt performance, it's a good idea to request a credit report regularly. Under typical circumstances, I would recommend requesting a credit report once every 4 months. You can request a credit report once a year from each of the three credit bureaus, which are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Spacing your requests out to every 4 months allows you to maximize how often you can check. However, due to the pandemic, you can actually request a credit report from each of the bureaus once a week through April 2021. Now, you probably don't need to check that often. Not much is going to change unless you're making a lot of debt changes within your financial landscape right now. But the opportunity is there if you need it. So, what can you do now to get your debt relationships in order? The first thing you should do is make a list of any and all debts that you have, based on their balances and interest rates, and also due dates. You can determine the best course of action to pay them down. The second action you should take is requesting your annual credit report. So set a reminder to do this every 4 months, like I just said. I personally request mine in January, May, and September every year. So set reminders for yourself so that you know when to check it. Specify which bureau you're going to request from in each month, and then review it. And we have resources on our website if you're not sure what to look for when you're looking at a credit report. To do this, you can visit annualcreditreport.com. Always go through that method. Don't go directly to the bureau's websites because I feel like they make it way more confusing than it has to be. Annualcreditreport.com is where you need to go to request the report. There are also other services available online like Credit Karma that can provide you with similar information. I do want to note that a credit report doesn't include a credit score for free. You can request that and pay for it. Credit Karma is a service where you can check your credit score if that's of interest to you.